Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for tuning in to our Shabbat video, recording from the Lehrman Chapel here at Temple Ohev Sholom. I'm grateful to our organist and musical director, Prestia, for putting all of this together so we can enjoy Shabbat. Just as a reminder, I'm always available to you if you need me, either by calling my cell phone at 717-460-6444, or send me an email, rabbi@ohevsholom.org. Let's begin by lighting our Shabbat candles on page 120.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech olam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Let's continue on page 127. There are days when we seek things for ourselves and measure failure by what we do not gain. On Shabbat, we seek not to acquire, but to share. There are days when we exploit nature as a horn of plenty that can never be exhausted. On Shabbat, we stand in wonder before the mystery of creation. There are days when we act as if we cared nothing for the rights of others. On Shabbat, we remember that justice is our duty and a better world our goal. So we embrace Shabbat, day of rest, day of wonder, day of peace. We continue with L'chadodi on page 138. Let's continue with Baruch on page 146. Asher bidvaro ma'ariva ravim b'chochma poteach she'arim uvitfuna mishane itim umachalif et hazmanim umisader et ha'kochavim B'mishmerotehem barakia kirtsono, borei yom v'layla, kolel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or, uma'avir yom umevi layla, umabdil bein yom uvein layla, Adonai tsevaot shemo, El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed, Baruch ata Adonai hama'ariv aravim. Page 151. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol, all these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works and the living language that gives it form? Baruch ata Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. The Shema is on page 152. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Ve'ahavta, page 154. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha ubechol nafshecha ubechol meyodecha ve'hayu hadevarim ha'eleh asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha ve'shinantam levanecha ve'dibarta bam Beshiftecha bebetecha, uvlechtecha vaderech, uvshochbecha uvkumecha, ukshartam leot al yedecha, vehayu letotafot beinenecha, uktavtam al mezuzot betecha, uvisharecha. Leman tizkeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kedoshim lelohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiot lachem le'elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem. Page 157. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea, Michamocha, page 158. Yam bam 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 bibi babi yam bam bim bam yam bam 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 bibi bam yam bam bim bam ay 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 yam bam bim bam ay 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 yam bam bim bam mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi chamocha ne'edor bakol love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. V'shamru, page 162. Sing along with me. Hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day, and may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh ha-Shabbat. We continue with Ritzeh on page 175. Page 177. Join with me, please. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life. Wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within. For the world around us so filled with beauty. For the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more we give thanks to you. Baruch atah Adonai. Tov Shimcha U'Lacha Ne'el Le'odot. Shalom Rav, page 178. Shalom Rav, Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav, Yisrael Amcha, Tasim. Continue now with a moment of silent reflection. We continue now with Seder Kriyat HaTorah, the service for the reading of the Torah. I invite you to please turn to page 362.
Ein kamocha v'achanim Adonai, ve'en kema'asecha, malchutecha, malchut kol olamim, u'memshaltecha bechol dor v'ador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimlok leolam va'ed, Adonai uz le'amo yiten, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. In this scroll is the secret of our people's life from Sinai until now. Its teaching is love and justice, goodness and hope. Freedom is its gift to all who treasure it. Baruch Shenotan Torah, Torah. Baruch Shenotan Torah, Torah. Le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu Gadol, Adonenu Kadosh Shemo. Lecha Adonai Hagidura ve'Hagidura ve'Hativeret ve'Hanetzach ve'Hahor. Kechol b'shamayim u'ba'aretz, kechol b'shamayim u'ba'aretz. Lechol Adonai ha'mamlacha v'hamitnaseh lechol erosh.
This week's Torah portion comes from the book called Pinchas, and I'll read a little bit of it for you, and then have a little discussion about what's going on. So let's begin, if we may, by finding the there it is. Let's begin, if we may, by reciting the blessing before the Torah together. Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach, Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam va'ed, Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato, Baruch ata Adonai noten haTorah. V'yomer Adonai el Moshe, and God spoke to Moses, Kach lecha et Yehoshua bin Nun. Take before you Joshua, the son of Nun. Ish asher ruach bo, a man who is infused with spirit. V'samachta et yadcha alav, and place your hands upon him. V'ha'amita oto lifnei Eliezer HaKohen, and stand him in front of Eliezer the priest. V'lifnei kol ha'adat, and before the whole community. V'tzivata oto le'anechem, and consecrate him in front of them in their eyes. V'natata mechodcha elav, and make him, give him a sense of honor. Lama'an yishmo kol edat b'nei Yisrael, so he may be heard and listened to by the entire community of the children of Israel. Blessing afterward. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. So what does this mean, and what's happening now in this Torah portion? If you remember a little bit from last week, we had the incident with Moses hitting the rock and God being very angry at him for embarrassing God in front of the whole community, and made it clear to Moses that he would not be leading the children of Israel into the promised land, but only up to its border. So now we have to find out who's going to take over and who's going to be, in other words, ordained. Who is going to be the next Moses? Well, quite honestly, there's only one Moses, and there's not going to be another Moses, but what is happening in this week's Torah portion is the precursor to what happens when a rabbi is ordained. A rabbi is ordained when another rabbi places his hands upon him. It's called smicha, and gives him the honor of leading a community. And that's what Moses does to Joshua, the son of Nun, in the presence of Eleazar, the priest, and the whole community. The question is, why was Joshua chosen? Well, there are a couple of reasons. One, if we remember back in the Torah when God sent spies up to the land of Israel, and most of the spies said that the land was filled with giants, Joshua and Caleb. Joshua was one of the two who said, we don't mind who's in the land, we're going to go anyway and make it our own. And God remembered that. So God understood that Joshua had some leadership qualities and some intellect. But what the Torah says is Joshua was ordained because of his ruach, because of his spirit. He was infused with the Spirit of God. And I think what this teaches us is when we look for leaders in our community, intellect is important, but so is spirit. If someone is an intellectual but has no soul, it's very hard to make a connection. And if someone is filled with soul but isn't very intellectual, there's a lot of ruach, there's a lot of wind, but maybe not a lot of substance. So Joshua was someone who had both, an intellect and substance. And when we look for leaders, not only in the rabbinate, but leaders in politics in our own country and people who lead our world, we need to understand that we need both ruach, wind, and intellect, brains. And now, in the presence of the Torah scroll, I'm going to ask Chris to come forward to chant the Mishaberach for us on page 371.
Imot
presence of the Torah scroll, we say together, Baruch atah Adonai, Rofeh HaCholim. We praise you, Adonai, our God, who heals the sick. And we say Amen. And may God watch out for all of us, those of us who are sick at heart, those of us who are physically ill, the caregivers in our midst, and those who take the risk every day to make sure that our lives can be whole. May God bring blessing to us all, and we say Amen. Now we turn to page 374 as we return the Torah to the ark. Ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace. It's with our own. The mourner's Kaddish is recited on page 598. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yamad yivrach cheruteh v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chayechon u'vyomechon u'v'chayedecho beit Yisrael, v'galav izman kariv v'yimeru amen, yehesh shemei Rabbah mevorach le'olam umei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei kudsho barichu le'ela min kol birchata b'shirata tushbachata v'nechemata da'miran v'yama v'yimaru amen yehesh lomo rabo min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'akol Yisrael v'yimaru amen Useh shalom b'imromav u'ya'aseh shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimaru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all of us who mourn, and comfort to all who are bereaved, and we say, Amen. Our closing hymn is Adon Olam. We want you to join with us. It's in your prayer books on page 625.
Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem kol Yitzir Nivrak, Le'etnasa, B'chef Sachol, Azay Melech Shemo Nivra, Adon Olam, Ve'acharei, Kichlot HaKol, Le'ba'aro Yimlach Torah, Adon Olam, Ve'hu Haya, Ve'hu Hoveh, Ve'hu Yeh B'tifara, Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem kol Yitzir Nivrak, Le'etnasa, B'chef Sachol, Azay Melech Shemo Nivra, Adon Olam, Ve'ya'ado, Akim Ruchi, Ve'yekishan Ve'a'ira, Adon Olam, Ve'imruchi, Gediati, Adon Olim, Lo Ira, Adon Olam, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem kol Yitzir Nivrak, Le'etnasa, B'chef Sachol, Azay Melech Shemo Nivra, Adon Olam.
And now let's all take a moment as I ask God's blessings on each and every one of us. Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, our God and God of our mothers and fathers, grant us a Shabbat filled with joy and rest, and a week ahead filled with good health and peace. May we all take care of each other spiritually and emotionally, and continue to let God into our hearts. And we say, Amen. Shabbat Shalom.